Welcome back to Sailing El Jaleo! This week we pick up where we left off last week in the Nassau River in North Florida. We managed to navigate South Amelia River without running aground this time, and we finally make it into Georgia where we have to navigate their new anchoring rules. From there we go on and see wild horses in the always beautiful Cumberland Island and beyond. So we might as well go ahead and get right into it. So grab a drink, climb aboard, and let's get going! Last week we ended up anchoring in the Nassau River in North Florida, where we actually ended up staying for a day. The following day they had projected a 30% chance of rain for most of the day, and normally when that happens we always stay put and it doesn't rain. But I'm actually glad we did stay this time because it rained for a good chunk of the day. Hey y'all, not sure if you can hear me or not, but we've got one hell of a thunderstorm heading straight for us. And I don't like it. Not one bit. I can hear the thunder already. Thankfully it's not too windy. I'm sure this will come with some wind. But yeah, I just checked all of our ropes. Everything is good. And hopefully we don't get struck by lightning. And hopefully we don't go anywhere. We've got a big area here. I mean, it's hundreds, it's at least 100 yards to shore, and it stays deep all the way up to shore, so we would have to drag quite a ways to get into trouble. So I'm not too worried about that, but yeah, this is some nastiness. I like rain. I don't necessarily like thunderstorms. If I was on land, I would love a good thunderstorm, but at anchor, not necessarily. So, all right, I'll let you know what happens here. Thankfully, the majority of the nasty storm headed north and missed us, and we just ended up getting a little bit of rain. The wind wasn't bad, and it was a nice rinse down for the deck. The next day we headed north again, and it was a very cold and windy day. As you can see, I was wearing my sexy Hello Kitty fleece pajamas in an attempt to stay warm. And the Nassau River goes out through the Nassau Inlet into the Atlantic Ocean, and it's very shallow. It's only a foot or two shallow at the mouth of the inlet, so a lot of sand gets carried in and out of the Nassau River every day when the tide switches. So there is a lot of shoaling, and the South Amelia River comes into the Nassau River just about a half a mile up the river. So between the Nassau River and the South Amelia River, there is a lot of shoaling. And if you'll remember a few episodes ago, probably 6 or 7 episodes ago when we first entered Florida, we did actually run aground. We were going right down the channel in South Amelia River, and it was supposed to be 11 feet deep, but it was not. But we got pulled out, so that was good. And now I knew how to avoid it. So if you're ever going down the South Amelia River, stick to the green side of the channel. That has a lot better depth to it. When we came through the green side, we saw 20 feet the whole way, so it's really a drastic difference between the two sides. The first day was cold and windy, so we didn't travel very far. We only went 12 miles up the river to Fernandina Beach, where we anchored for the night. And we anchored right next to a cellulose plant, which is a fancy name for a paper plant. And there were two different parts of it. There was the pulp making part where they chewed up the wood, and then there was the processing plant. And depending upon which way the wind was blowing, it either smelled really good or smelled really bad. So it wasn't the best place to anchor, but we wanted to wait for a calm day where we could cross Cumberland Sound without too big of waves. It was a little rough as we crossed Cumberland Sound, but on the far side of Cumberland Sound is Cumberland Island, and Cumberland Island is very large, and it's got some sandy beaches on it, and this was the first time we had seen wild horses on Cumberland Island. And this, I saw them twice, on this end and then I saw them again on the north end of the island. On the south end, I just got some crappy cell phone video, so I'm not going to insert that here. It's really, really bad. But when we see horses on the north side of the island, I did get some decent photos of them, so I'll insert them once we get to the north end of Cumberland Island. I did end up spending the night and the next day in Crooked River, just north of the Kings Bay Nuclear Submarine Base. There were no subs there at the time, otherwise I would have shot some video of that. It's always neat going through there. And there weren't even any patrol boats this time, which was kind of odd, but I'm sure there was plenty of security there. But there are some new anchoring regulations in Georgia, and they've changed over the last few years. So the current regulations as of 2023 are you cannot anchor within 300 feet of a marina, within 150 feet of a marine structure other than a marina, or within 500 feet of an approved commercial shellfish growing area. And there's a map that shows all of the different shellfish growing areas. And we were actually in Crooked River, we were actually anchored right next to one, but I was over 1,000 feet away from it. And I did have a DNR helicopter hover over me for a while. I don't know if they had the slide rule out and they were trying to determine how far away I was from it, but you know, after about 5 minutes they left. They didn't reach out on the radio and try and get a hold of me or anything, so they must have determined that I was okay. And actually two nights that we anchored, we did have to take into consideration the shellfish growing zones. There was another time we were anchored right next to one as well, and there were 4 boats there that night, and I made sure I was at least 700 or 800 feet away from it. The other boats were a little bit closer, but no one said anything. So there are some new rules, so if you're going through Georgia, make sure you check those out. While we were anchored in Crooked River for the day, I did fly the drone over to Cumberland Island. I thought perhaps I could see some wild horses with the drone, but it was too dense of an area and the island was actually a little further away than I thought it was, so I started having some connectivity issues with the drone. So I turned her around and brought her back home. As we made our way around Cumberland Island, we finally reached the north end where we encountered more wild horses. I have a strict don't F with wild animals policy, and large animals kind of scare me, horses included. But I have to admit, this was really cool to see. On the north end of Cumberland Island is St. Andrews Sound, and there's a very large shoal that goes right down the center of St. Andrews Sound. So in order to go down the Intracoastal Waterway, you actually have to take a U-turn out into the ocean. It's very brief, and you want to do it on a very calm day. That's one of the reasons why we stayed in Crooked River for a day, because we knew the next day was going to have very low wind, which is what we wanted. And it's pretty crazy there. It actually goes from about 60 feet to 8 feet. In a 20-yard span, which is a pretty steep incline. But we made it through St. Andrews Sound with no problems. When we made it through St. Andrews Sound, we actually went up to Jekyll Island and we anchored right behind Jekyll Island. And I just want to one tip for anyone that's using Navionics: if you have the nautical charts on, which is what most people use, if you look at an area like this, it says it's 4 feet deep, but there's an anchorage there and people say it's deeper than that. And the first time I went by this area, I would have anchored there, but I'm like, I've got a 5.5 foot draft. It says it's only 4 feet deep, so obviously I can't anchor there. But if you go into your menu settings and on your map options, if you change to sonar charts, it'll actually give you a sonar depth reading contours, so you can see where it said it was only 4 feet deep, it's actually 12 feet deep, and you can get in there. So that's why all these little pins are there, because I did end up anchoring there and it was perfectly fine. But I actually bypassed it on the first time through because I thought it was way too shallow. So there are different options. So yeah, I use the sonar charts almost exclusively now. It still shows the channel on it, still shows Bob's tracks on it to follow. So yeah, if I think the default setting is the nautical charts, but the sonar charts definitely give you a lot more detail. And that's all we have time for this week. I would love to give a massive shout out to my Patreon crew. Without your guys' support, I absolutely would not make these videos. And my Patreon crew is Joan and Juddy Judnick, Val and Chris Alcorn, Denise and Eli Sackett, Joan and Jim Linbo, Sherry Erickson, Deb Shaw, and Matthew Spotten. Thank you guys so very much for your support. It really means the world to me. If you are interested in joining our Patreon page, there is a link in the description down below, and that'll take you to Patreon where you can sign up. And once you sign up, that'll give you access to tons of bonus photos and videos. I try and post several times a week while I'm traveling to let you know where I'm at and what's going on. And you would also help support the channel, which would be awesome. If you do like our videos, please like, comment, and subscribe. That helps us out as well. Alrighty, I hope you all are well, and hopefully it's warming up where you guys are. Okay, I'll see you next week.